the beginning of light and darkness. At the dawn of time, when there was only light and darkness, the Absolute Being, a God beyond comprehension, existed. In the beginning, the Absolute Being split the light into the rulers, beings meet to protect the world, and the darkness into the monarchs, beings born with the sole purpose of destroying everything. As the rulers fought to maintain the world and the monarchs fought to destroy it, a massive and devastating war began. This war would stretch across eons, with neither side gaining a clear victory. The rebellion of the rulers. After centuries of endless war, the rulers grew weary and desperate for a solution. They approached the Absolute Being, pleading for more power to finally end the war by annihilating the monarchs. But the Absolute Being remained silent, and in that moment, the rulers realized the terrible truth. The war was nothing more than a game to the Absolute Being. The God had no interest in ending the conflict, and as long as the Absolute Being remained alive, the war would never cease. This revelation led 7 of the 8 rulers to rebel against their God. Only Ashbourne, the last and strongest of the rulers, remained loyal, refusing to go against the Absolute Being. However, Ashbourne's efforts to stop the rebellion were in vain. The traitorous rulers easily defeated him and left him for dead. Though severely injured, Ashbourne transformed into the Shadow Monarch, a powerful new form, and began to heal. But by the time he recovered and returned to the battlefield, the rebellion was over, and the Absolute Being was dead. The rise of the rulers as the new gods. With the Absolute Being dead, the rulers were free to reshape the world in their image. Using powerful tools containing fragments of the god's essence, the rulers hunted down the remaining monarchs. Their victory seemed certain when they captured one of the monarchs, Ligia, and the tide of war began to shift in their favor. However, Ashbourne, who had switched sides, killed Baron, a powerful monarch, and soon afterward, the rulers approached Ashbourne. They begged him for forgiveness, hoping to make amends for their past actions. Though Ashbourne was furious and initially refused to accept their plea, he eventually became too emotionally overwhelmed to respond. Still angry and seeking revenge for the betrayal he had suffered, Ashbourne chose to leave the battlefield and retreat into hiding, where he would rebuild his shadow army. With Ashbourne gone, the rulers were able to defeat the remaining monarchs, forcing them to flee into the cracks between worlds. The rulers attempt to save the humans. Centuries passed, and the monarchs began to regroup and plot their revenge. This time, their goal was to destroy the human world and rebuild their armies. The rulers, knowing they could not allow such destruction, tried to stop the monarchs. But despite their best efforts, they failed. In desperation, the rulers turned to the Cup of Reincarnation, a powerful artifact created by the Absolute Being. This cup had the ability to turn back time by 10 years, giving the rulers a second chance to stop the monarchs. However, the rulers soon realized that no matter how many times they used the cup, the outcome would always be the same. The human world would eventually be destroyed, and the war would continue without end. Even worse, the power of the Cup of Reincarnation was not infinite, and it began to weaken over time. The rulers grant their powers to humans. With the Cup of Reincarnation losing its power, the rulers decided to take a different approach. They opened gates to the human world and unleashed magic beasts, flooding the world with mana. This would gradually make the humans strong enough to resist the monarch's attacks. Alongside this, the rulers selected 7 human vessels, individuals who would inherit their powers and become the strongest hunters the world had ever known. One of these vessels was sunk. A Hugh carry one of the rulers' powers. However, the rulers were uncertain about Ashbourne's true loyalties, and they ordered Huan to kill Ashbourne's new human vessel, the one who would soon become the next Shadow Monarch. The rise of Jinwoo as the Shadow Monarch. 10 years later, Sung Jinwoo, a human, was chosen by Ashbourne as his new vessel. At first, Jinwoo was not aware of the powers that were being transferred into him. However, as time passed, he grew stronger, and eventually, when he reached level 100, Ashbourne chose to pass his full powers to Jinwoo, making him the new Shadow Monarch. In a shocking turn of events, Ashbourne betrayed his Uli Kandiaru, a member of the Monarchs, locking him out of the system and transferring all his powers to Jinwoo. Kandiaru, realizing Ashbourne had turned against him, was forced to watch as Jinwoo rose to power, becoming the new Shadow Monarch. Huan learns the truth. Meanwhile, Sung Huan, who had been sent by the rulers to kill Ashbourne's new vessel, learned a shocking truth. Jinwoo was Ashbourne's new host, and he was the Shadow Monarch. Torn by the revelation that his own son had become the Shadow Monarch, Huan could not bring himself to kill Jinwoo. Instead, he chose to protect him from the Monarchs. The Monarchs attacked the human world. The Monarchs, realizing that the rulers were now working with Jinwoo, launched an all-out attack on the human world. They killed several of the rulers' human vessels, including Christopher Reed, the strongest hunter in America, and Jonas, the strongest hunter in Brazil. The war between the rulers and the Monarchs grew even more intense, with both sides fighting for control of the world. The final battle and the fall of Antares. The final battle came when Antares, the strongest monarch, and his remaining subordinates launched an assault on the human world. With the help of the rulers, Jinwoo took on Antares in a battle that would decide the fate of the world. The rulers descended into the human world, their true forms now fully unleashed, and together they fought against Antares. In a furious clash, the rulers were able to kill Antares, ending the war and defeating the Monarchs. The last use of the Cup of Reincarnation. Despite the victory, Jinwoo felt the weight of the losses he had suffered in the war. Many of his friends and allies had died, and he wished he could bring them back. So, he asked the rulers to use the Cup of Reincarnation one final time to turn back time and bring everyone back to life. The rulers, understanding his wish, used the cup one last time, sending them all 10 years into the past. The power of the cup was now completely exhausted. The final act of the rulers. Before they disappeared, the rulers wished Jinwoo the best of luck and left him with a message of gratitude. They had finally won the war against the Monarchs, and now the world was safe. But the rulers knew that they would always have a role in shaping the future, even from the shadows.